How's it going, everybody? Welcome to General Hospital MV, my GH after show. I gotta say, I thoroughly enjoyed the show this week. I mean, we got everything from new stories for characters that don't usually get stories, to a memorial for a beloved character, and even some surprise returns, so let's get into it. The week started off with Laura catching up with her bestie Curtis, and he brought her up to speed on his life, including about his back from the dead father. Laura helped him realize that perhaps he does want a relationship with his father, despite all the obstacles that they're facing. There's a new and unexpected obstacle though, Marshall's health. This week, Marshall worked up the courage to ask Epiphany out for dinner after she opened up to him about her son Stan, and even hinting at once wanting to become a doctor. She explained that her former guidance counselor advised against becoming a doctor because it was a different time and it wasn't easy for a black woman to become a doctor, but that she doesn't have any regrets about becoming a nurse because the nurses are like her family. Not long after that, Marshall grabbed his chest and collapsed to the floor, and thankfully Finn and Elizabeth were there on a date, so they helped him out, but we'll get into Finn and Elizabeth a little bit later. When Portia saw Marshall get wheeled into GH, she called Curtis right away and he came right over. The doctor that checked Marshall out said that he collapsed because of his blood pressure, but that it was nothing that a change in medication wouldn't help. Epiphany overheard this and she questioned whether that was the case, and he had the audacity to shut Nurse Epiphany down. What do you guys think? Is the world ready for Dr. Epiphany Johnson? Let me know in the comments below. Epiphany actually brings this up to Marshall and suggests that he gets a second opinion, but then Marshall cryptically says that the doctor and him have some kind of an understanding. Now, when Curtis checked in with Marshall, Marshall actually stated that this has happened to him before, but that he had it under complete control, which of course frustrated Curtis, but luckily Curtis still offered to drive Marshall home. Good for you, Curtis. There is a chance that we might have gotten a little insight this week on the person that Marshall has been hiding from. Brick showed up to the Corinthos house, interrupting another argument between Sonny and Carly, and of course Carly decides to leave right after that. She was just over because she was dropping off the kids to school or whatever. Brick tells Sonny that there is a new mystery man, Mr. Nobody as it were, that has taken out some of his suppliers in another town. I think it's safe to assume that it's probably the same man that Marshall has been hiding from all this time. Let's talk Carly. She is living at the Metrocourt and getting comfort and advice from her mostly inherited friends, like Diane, her lawyer, and Sam, her bestie's ex-girlfriend. I actually really like the scenes between Sam and Carly. I mean, they've come a long way since the early days, right? I mean, the first time that they really bonded was the last time that Jason died, and now that Jason has died again, they're bonding again, except Sam's not too beaten up over Jason's death, unlike Carly. Sam just lets Carly vent about her self-destructing love life. Waiting for it to fall apart completely is Nina Reeves, probably. I mean, she's definitely good at denying that she doesn't want Sonny and Carly to fall apart, especially to those that want to take advantage of the idea of Sonny and Nina being together. The latest person on that list is Britt Westbourne. She, of course, is going up to bat for her best friend Brad, trying to get him out of his aunt's grasps, and thinks that Sonny could help the situation. But I think I agree with Nina when she says that she thinks whether they're together or not, Sonny's not gonna do anything to help Brad because he hates what he did to his family. Unless, of course, Britt does something to be indebted to Sonny, which is how Brad got out of jail in the first place. Either way, when Nina refuses to help, Britt says that she would call Sonny on her own, and she does so, but Avery picks up the phone, and this is where I get so confused. Avery says that Sonny isn't home, and neither is Carly, which first of all, Sonny was definitely home. Carly wasn't home, but then here's what Britt says. Britt looks at Nina and says, "I think Carly moved out of the house." And I'm like, what? How did she leap to that conclusion from Avery saying that Carly wasn't home? Like, I don't even know how that made sense in the writer's mind. Also, Britt didn't even ask for Carly, so the fact that Avery even mentioned Carly was a bit weird. I don't know, did I miss something? That just seemed so odd to me. Anyway, now let's get into Finn and Elizabeth. Elizabeth finally is preparing to go on her date with Finn, but not before she confides in Terry and in Portia about the incident with the ring. Apparently, all of her kids swear up and down that they had nothing to do with her ring ending up in her locker. Elizabeth and Finn go on their date, but we already know how that went, so it didn't last very long. Once they got back to the hospital, Finn and Elizabeth were ready to continue their date, but then Elizabeth gets a phone call and she has to rush over to Jax's house. Why, you may ask? Brooke Lynn accidentally conked Cameron over the head with a vase. And why is Brooke Lynn at Jax's house, you may ask? Because that's the house that Brooke Lynn and Chase moved into for some reason. Apparently, instead of going to Lucy, Brooke Lynn instead went to Jax, and Jax allowed her to move into his house because of his past relationship with her mom, Lois. Not romantic, she was just the reason why Jax came to town apparently. I don't know much about that story. Suffice to say, Jax didn't let Jocelyn know about this for some reason. Cameron and Jocelyn went to Jax's house to have some alone time together, and of course Brooke was upstairs and heard a noise. She's there by herself because she had overheard Chase talking to Dante about how he's not sure he could fall for someone with a history like Brooke Lynn's, and of course she took offense to that and basically pushed him out the door. But she was scared naturally because she is worried about the Peter August situation and thought that it might be some of his men trying to kidnap Bailey, and so she had conked Cameron over the head. She does call Chase back to the house because of the incident though, and not long after that, Elizabeth and Finn come in to check in on Cameron to see if he's injured. Cam is fine, but Elizabeth and Finn agree to postpone the rest of their date, and Elizabeth takes Cameron home, and then she scars Cameron for life by having the talk, and he runs up the stairs. And then we get a weird segue scene. It cuts to the next morning and Dante shows up with bad news, and I am terrified because they've already killed so many people. My mind was reeling. I'm sure your guys' minds were too. I mean, I was like, oh no, is Audrey dead? Like, is Jeff Weber dead? Are they just killing him off now? Is it Hayden? My initial thought was, is it Terry? The reason why I thought it could be Terry is because while Elizabeth and Finn were on their date, Portia convinced Terry to get a dating app that was anonymous, and she got a match on there, and I was like, wow, is GH really about to tackle like transgender abuse? Because that's such an important thing to bring up. It wasn't the case, of course. Apparently someone torched Franco's art studio, and I was like, they did that segue for that? Are you joking? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm really glad that nobody died, but I'm like, they did that segue and made it such a big deal for Franco's art studio? Really? I'm sure this has something to do with Peter August as well. Dante did ask Elizabeth if she still had the keys to the studio, just in case they might have been stolen by somebody, and she checks in the little box that had the key, and her ring is there as well. You know, initially I thought that the ring might have been moved by her kids, but yes, they were cleared. And then I was like, well, maybe Hayden, maybe she knows about Finn and Elizabeth and she's trying to remind her of Franco, I don't know. Or maybe Jeff for some weird reason. Now I just think it's Peter August. Peter isn't ready to be shipped off to Pentonville just yet and tries to fake a back injury, and he tries to coerce Dr. Finn into signing off on that back injury by trying to blackmail him with the fact that Finn tried to kill him. Bro, this is the doctor that thought you were dead when you were very much alive. You're really trusting him to diagnose anything? But anyway, Finn refuses to do it, basically telling Peter to do his worst. Luckily for Finn, when Peter tries to get Martin to press charges against Finn for trying to murder him, Martin advises against it because he's got such a slim chance as it is to get off of this crime. Not only is there absolutely no proof that Finn tried to kill Peter, but it would be Finn's word against the word of Peter August. And if Finn had confessed, he'd obviously bring up the fact that Peter had poisoned Chase and threw the antidote over the roof, and that Finn got mad about it. Ironically, Finn ended up confessing the whole thing to his brother Chase anyway. I do have to wonder though, if Chase gets out of his suspension and then the PCPD find out that he knows that Finn tried to kill Peter, will that end his job indefinitely? I hope not. Finn really should be getting a medal. Silver medal though, he didn't actually kill Peter. Anyway, the bottom line is if Peter was trying to get revenge on Finn for leaving him to die in a freezer, then he would be aware that Elizabeth tried to help him do that, and so he's probably messing with Elizabeth by moving the ring or having someone move the ring around the house or wherever, and probably torch the studio to get rid of any evidence against him. Alright, let's talk about Maxie. She is understandably a little bit on edge. I mean, who could blame her? She is aware that Tracy knows that Bailey is actually Louise, and on top of that, Anna and Felicia have been trying to convince her to go back to Pawtuck to try and scrounge up any memories that could help them track down Louise. Now, initially when Anna brought it up, Maxie was down to go until Anna said that she wants to also bring Austin along. And as you guys know, Maxie doesn't want Austin to remember that Brooklyn was there because he was only a bit unconscious when she did show up to take the baby. So when Maxie and Felicia were hanging out at the yoga center, Maxie said hard nope to going to Pawtuck. Now, of course, Felicia doesn't exactly know why, so she actually goes and pays Austin a visit and meets him for the first time, and I loved the little banter between them. She was clearly in mad approval of Austin for Maxie. She tried to convince him to convince her to go to Pawtuck, but he refused to try and sway Maxie, and Maxie overheard the conversation. She's like, I do trust Austin, but I don't like that you guys are talking behind my back. Eventually though, Maxie had to cave because Austin agreed to go to Pawtuck to try and remember anything, so Maxie doesn't want him remembering anything that could ruin her cover. Maxie, if you had just told your family from the get-go where you hid Louise, this wouldn't be happening to you right now. You have a family full of super spies and law enforcement. Who are they gonna tell? Anyway, we got a glimpse of Brando and Sasha this week. week. Of course, the two of them are still grieving, but they're grieving separately. Sasha has been pushing both Brando and Gladys away and keeping to herself. Gladys did manage to convince Sasha to go to yoga with her, and I think that's really cool because the woman that plays Gladys is actually a yoga instructor in real life, so that's a cool nod to her. But she does refuse to talk to Gladys about her grief for Liam as well. Brando actually vents to TJ, and I like that their bromance is back. It's nice that Brando has someone to talk to, and TJ does convince him to reach out to Sasha and try to invite her out to dinner and see if they can talk together because he shouldn't give up on her. So hopefully they will find their way back to each other soon. Alright, finally let's talk about the infamous Lucas Lorenzo Spencer, aka Luke. Friday's episode was a standalone episode for the character's memorial, and with that episode came a lot of treats. We got a very unmedicated Sonny Corinthos ready to square off with ambulance chaser himself, Scott Baldwin, at Charlie's. They were about to fight, but then Victor comes in, and the two of them decide to team up and fight Victor. Never thought I'd see the day. They all looked like total idiots, but it was very entertaining nonetheless, and they all offered to pay for the damages. Of course, Sonny owns the bar, so he doesn't care. We also got to see the Haunted Star again because that's where the memorial took place, and the memorial had a plethora of reasons as to why certain characters couldn't make it. For instance, Lucky and Ethan couldn't make it because there was some kind of virus outbreak in the village they were staying in, and they had to quarantine for 2 weeks. That sounds familiar, but it wasn't COVID though. Before the memorial began, Anna, Felicia, and Dante heard a crash in another room. When they went in there was a flash drive, and when they went back to the main room, there was a big screen TV, so they decided to plug the flash drive in, and who is it? None other than Helena Cassadine herself. Helena does say in the video that if people are seeing this video, it means that she died first, and that Luke followed her afterwards. I absolutely adore Constance Towers, you guys. I mean, you can tell that she's aged a little bit, especially in her voice, but she still looked absolutely fabulous, and her line delivery was top notch. It was so entertaining, but of course Laura just couldn't stand it anymore and unplugged it before she even got to finish her video message. Something tells me Helena had something important to say though, and it probably has to do with whatever Victor Cassadine is preparing for. When the memorial began, Tracy gave an emotional speech that was very fitting to Luke Spencer. Scott Baldwin actually opted out of going to the memorial because of the fight that happened at Charlie's, and thank God it did because it led to the most hilarious and fitting end to this memorial. Scott was on the docks and he was kind of talking at Luke Spencer, saying, you know, he won because he's still standing and Luke is dead. At that same time, Tracy had gone onto the deck of the Haunted Star with Luke's urn full of his ashes, and she intended to dump it into the water. Wind caught it and it hit Scott Baldwin. I was like, if that wasn't Luke Spencer, like, clearly, like, I know there's going to be constant questions on whether Luke is dead or not, but if that wasn't Luke Spencer having the last word on Scott Baldwin, like, that was just too good. And then when Bobby leaves the Haunted Star, she sees Scott on the docks and asks him what happened, and he's like, I caught the bouquet. Obviously relating to the fact that he caught the bouquet at Luke and Laura's wedding all those years ago, and he's been paying for it ever since. Tracy goes back into the Haunted Star and offers Laura a souvenir that she thinks that Luke would want her to have. Laura instantly recognizes it as the Ice Princess diamond from all those decades ago. Laura takes one look at it and she's like, no, just put that in the water and then dump Luke's ashes on top of it, which obviously Tracy can't do because she already dumped his ashes, and she walks away with it. And Spencer is upset because he was really intrigued by it, and Laura's like, nothing ever came good out of that diamond. And she's right, the Cassadines tried to control the weather with that thing and tried to control Lucky's mind with it. Who knows what else that thing is capable of? As Laura and Spencer were getting ready to leave the Haunted Star, Laura turns around and looks at the picture of Luke and blows it a kiss and says, goodbye my love, a really sweet moment, especially for Luke and Laura fans out there. And when she turns around to leave, in walks Jennifer Smith. I'm like, oh god, what does she want? It is the same actress that played her in 2015, but not the original actress. She's been recasted several times. One time she was actually recasted with Roseanne Barr. Can you believe that? What did you guys think of General Hospital this week? Let me know in the comments below, and stay tuned this Wednesday on the Dion's Corner channel. I'm live streaming for GHMV Reacts again, and this week I actually made a poll on the community page asking what big sweep storyline you want me to highlight in this next reaction. So I gave you guys choices of like the really big sweep storylines from the early 2000s, so the Port Charles Hotel fire, the Metro Court hostage crisis, the train wreck, the monkey virus, the toxic balls story, all the really good ones. Let me know what you want me to highlight in that poll. And if you liked this video here, give it a big old thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.